All right, we start with breaking news on Hurricane Erin, the massive and powerful Category 2 storm that is lashing the East Coast tonight. The supersized storm is more than 500 miles wide. It's packing winds of up to 110 miles per hour as it moves north over the Atlantic. It is so big that even hundreds of miles out to ocean, Erin still poses a deadly risk for millions of people up and down the East Coast. A dozen states from Florida to Maine are under alert tonight. Warnings of life-threatening rip currents and rough surf from that storm could last for days. Erin is now taking aim at the Outer Banks of North Carolina with destructive coastal flooding, wind, and rain. Powerful tides seen here are swamping entire beachfront neighborhoods. The North Carolina governor has called a state of emergency. National Guard troops and water rescue teams have been positioned all up and down the coast. And mandatory evacuation orders are in effect for parts of the vulnerable shoreline. Those orders are leading to scenes like this. Massive one-way traffic jams out of beach towns as people heed the warnings to get out. And as Erin creeps north along the East Coast tonight, its winds could ramp up even more, with Virginia next in line to feel Erin's wrath beginning late this evening. The Mid-Atlantic and southern New England states have been warned they will see dangerous ocean conditions through Saturday. For more on Hurricane Erin, let's go to Dan DePodwin from AccuWeather. Dan, this hurricane isn't hitting land, but it's causing enormous problems and dangerous conditions. Is that because of its power or its size?
Good evening, Elizabeth. Certainly, probably both of those things. As you mentioned, over 500 miles. Well, I was just doing some math here. It looks like about 800 miles in terms of the cloud shield of Erin from just inland of North Carolina here all the way out to sea. An unusually large hurricane, 110-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Those are right at the center of Erin, well offshore, but without the landfall, still significant impacts from really Florida all the way up the East Coast into New England. Rough surf, rip currents, significant waves, and some strong gusty winds along the Outer Banks up into the Mid-Atlantic overnight into the day tomorrow.
And Dan, Erin is continuing to strengthen, right?
It is. We've been looking at the data here this evening at AccuWeather. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft are flying into it here shortly, so we'll get another really good diagnosis from the aircraft data. We've seen some lightning, though, as well, and lightning usually indicates a strengthening storm. So we could see Erin regain Category 3 status on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale. That'd be 115-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Again, that's really close to the middle of Erin. So we'll be watching that closely. Regardless, so the impact's basically the same here. Those rough surf, rip currents, significant beach erosion, coastal flooding, property damage in the hardest hit areas, especially along the Outer Banks, but really extends some risk all the way up into coastal Jersey as well as the Cape and Islands.
And you just mentioned the Outer Banks, and we can see from your map that the yellow that you were just showing a moment ago really shows the flooding danger. We're hearing forecasts of storm surges of up to 6 feet high.
We could definitely have significant storm surge. There's obviously a lot of waves on top of that surge as well. We've seen significant wave impacts today. This surge, though, is the water rise above the standard water level. So we could see up to 6 feet of storm surge. That would be most likely overnight tonight into the first thing Thursday morning along the Outer Banks. And even a small water rise can cause coastal flooding in the most prone areas north along the Delmarva Peninsula, up through the Jersey Shore, even close to Sandy Hook, New Jersey.
Yeah, and worth reminding folks that, as always in hurricanes, it is the water that kills people, not the wind. Dan DePodwin, thank you so much for joining us from AccuWeather with the latest on Hurricane Erin. Turning now from a potential natural disaster to a man-made catastrophe in Ukraine. When Russia's Vladimir Putin first invaded Ukraine in 2022, many foreign policy experts predicted back then that the war would only end with Ukraine giving up land and getting some sort of security guarantee. Well, more than 3 years and 1 million casualties and hundreds of billions of dollars later, that could well turn out to be the case. The White House tells NewsNation that a highly anticipated meeting between Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy is expected to happen, they say, within the next 2 weeks. That source tells us that the sit-down is likely to happen someplace in Europe. Budapest, Hungary, and Geneva, Switzerland have both been floated as possible locations, as long as they're both fine with hosting an international war criminal named Vladimir Putin. It comes as NATO's 32 defense chiefs held a virtual meeting today to discuss security guarantees that could end Putin's unprovoked war. Part of the goal is to make sure Russia can never invade Ukraine again. The chair of NATO's military committee wrote they had a great candid discussion and that they are united in their support for a durable peace. We did not, however, get any specifics on what, if anything, they agreed to, and it is still unclear what the U.S. role would be in those plans. President Trump has made it clear that there will be no American troops on the ground in Ukraine. Instead, he is signaling that the U.S. could provide air support. Now, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, but that may turn out to be a distinction without much difference. The European leaders who met with Trump at the White House on Monday suggested that Ukraine should still get some kind of Article 5 type security. That's not likely to go over well with the isolationist wing of the MAGA base, and so far it is definitely not going over well in Russia. Putin's top diplomat is warning that any talks about security guarantees that do not involve the Kremlin are a road to nowhere.
We cannot agree with the fact that it is now proposed to resolve collective security issues without the Russian Federation. This will not work. I'm sure that in the West, and above all in the United States, they understand perfectly well that seriously discussing security issues without the Russian Federation is a utopia, a road to nowhere.
Keep in mind the security guarantees are to prevent Russia from invading again. Russia wants a seat at that table to determine how to stop itself from invading. Let's go right now to NewsNation's Robert Sherman, live for us in Ukraine. Robert, this big NATO meeting today happened after Russia launched an overnight drone attack right near the NATO border. Is Putin gaining? I mean, what's the strategy here? Is he just trying to grab as much land as he can before finally some sort of settlement happens?
Well, that's the thinking here from the Ukrainian side, Elizabeth, and the ramifications of that are certainly being felt outside of Ukraine here at this hour, with NATO member states now totally on edge. Even still within the last couple of hours, we've heard sirens going off here once again. You look at these overnight strikes that happened here in Ukraine, well, that caused the Romanians to put NATO jets in the air for fear that some of these drones fired by Russia would enter their airspace. Well, that was not the case in Romania. It was the case in Poland, where they say what's believed to be a Russian Shahed drone ended up making impact there, causing an explosion in eastern Poland. You had Poland's defense minister coming out today condemning the Russians, saying this, and I quote, "Once again, we are dealing with a provocation by the Russian Federation with a Russian drone. We are dealing in a crucial moment when discussions about peace in Ukraine are underway." As diplomacy is ramping up, you are not seeing these strikes from Russia subsiding. In fact, if you look at this analysis that was done by the Kyiv Independent, which was published here just a short while ago, they found since August 15th, which was when that Alaska summit took place, through August 20th, you had over 30 civilians killed, more than 140 injured. The two deadliest days, the night before President Zelenskyy was at the White House and the night after. That's why there's such a push here in order to get these diplomatic wheels turning. The Ukrainians say they're ready to go, but Russia's foreign minister once again saying today they're not ready to commit to a time or a date. Elizabeth?
Yeah, and that drone attack, it's worth remembering, Poland is part of NATO. That is a NATO ally saying it was under attack by this Russian drone. Robert Sherman reporting live from Ukraine. Thank you. Let's bring in our panel now. General Wesley Clark is the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, and Kay Hutchison is the former U.S. Ambassador to NATO. Great to have both of you with us. Do we not have Kay? No, soon. I think she's got some technical issues, but General will continue on. Zelenskyy is adamant that he needs these security guarantees for any peace deal before they can hammer anything out. You can't blame him. Putin has been biting off chunks of Ukraine for years now, largely unchallenged.
Absolutely right. You can't have a peace agreement like this, given Russia's record of breaking agreements and given Mr. Putin's 25-year quest to restore the Soviet Union's boundaries. Any peace agreement has got to be backed up by security guarantees. Absolutely right.
General, President Trump said he's open to providing air support to European peacekeepers in Ukraine, but the Kremlin said yet again it's categorically rejecting the idea of any NATO peacekeepers. There are reports that Putin suggested in that Alaska summit that China be the one to provide troops to curb Russian aggression. China?
China with the unlimited partnership with Russia.
Yeah.
Look, you could look at the body language and President Trump's expressions coming out of that meeting in Alaska and know that things didn't go very well. So I think we've got a really tough road. And I think we're going to have to continue to look at these security guarantees and provide some incentives for Mr. Putin to want to start negotiations sooner rather than later. President Trump said if he didn't get a ceasefire, there'd be severe consequences. We haven't seen those consequences. Instead, we fell off the need for a ceasefire, and President Putin's sort of laughing at us. So I hope President Trump will reconsider.
Ambassador, great to have you with us. We were just talking about the fact that a source in the White House is telling NewsNation that they expect a bilateral summit between Putin and Zelenskyy to happen within the next 2 weeks. Putin won't even say Zelenskyy's name. He has tried repeatedly to assassinate Zelenskyy, according to Ukrainian services. What are the chances this meeting between the two of them will actually happen?
I think President Putin is doing exactly what he has been doing all along. He's just playing everybody, delaying, trying to say he's for a peace, saying he's for a negotiation, and then he never ever really comes to the table, and he continues to bombard the Ukraines. Well, I think if there's any honor at all, if you are in a negotiation for a ceasefire or a peace, you don't continue to bombard the enemy. And that's what he's doing. And I think we're going to have to start putting sanctions or some form of leverage on him to make him really be serious about ending this war.
General, you don't even understand why Zelenskyy is insisting on this meeting with Putin, and why is President Trump pushing for it?
I don't know, because you can't resolve these things with a handshake. This requires a lot of staff work, a lot of detailed negotiations, and look how tough Lavrov is. So I don't know what President Zelenskyy thinks he's going to do when he walks in there. Point the finger, say to Putin, you've stolen 19,000 Ukrainian children. It'll be great press in Ukraine if it's covered that way, but it'll be met with a dressing down and humiliating comments and so forth from Mr. Putin, and probably ratchet up the tensions again. So I don't see the value in it, but he does. He must have a logic to it.
I can't fathom the security that will go into that meeting, given the fact that Putin has tried repeatedly to kill Zelenskyy. Ambassador, you maintain that things in Russia are actually far worse than many might think, and certainly than what Putin is pretending. The economy in Russia is in shambles. Putin is paying big bucks to men of all ages to sign up and fight his war, that he still refuses to call a war, by the way. You say Trump has a powerful weapon that he is not using, and that is more sanctions.
I think certainly with the strong support that has been clearly shown in Congress, that the secondary sanctions could start ratcheting up the heat on Putin. As you said, his economy is in shambles. And I think it is important that we start looking at all of the Russian assets that are being housed in banks in Europe, banks in America, and start using those assets to buy weapons for Ukraine to fight this war. And I think it's time for Ukraine to be able to use those weapons to stop the killings, stop the bombs from coming in, the drones from coming in. And now it's clear that Putin is going for citizens, for non-combatants.
Civilians.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous that we would sit here and let him do, not we, I mean, no one should be expected to see the Ukrainian people fight like this, but they're sitting ducks. All they get is bombarded, and they're not able to really use the force to go offense.
Yeah.
And really you've got to make Putin think that he is losing something. And right now, he doesn't appear to think so.
I think that is the general consensus. General Clark, Ambassador Hutchison, thank you both so much for joining us tonight with your expertise. Appreciate it. All right, coming up for us, we have the latest in that search for that 7-month-old baby that continues in California tonight. But now, what could be, perhaps, a major lead. Police say the boy's parents have stopped cooperating, so what happens now? And later, it looks like a comet, and most scientists think it's a comet, but I'll speak to a Harvard astrophysicist who says this picture might actually have documented an alien spacecraft powered by nuclear energy. Yes, you heard that right. Where is baby Emmanuel? It has been nearly a week since the 7-month-old baby was reported missing, and the only major development has been that his parents have now come under suspicion. But tonight, there is perhaps a potential lead in the case in California. The Sheriff's Department in San Bernardino County says it is aware of a possible reported sighting of Emmanuel Harrow. The baby was reported missing last Thursday. His mother, Rebecca, says that at around 7 o'clock in the evening, she was changing his diaper outside her truck in the parking lot of a Big 5 sporting goods store. She claims a man attacked her from behind and knocked her out. And when she came to, Emmanuel was gone. The reported sighting was in Kern County, which is 3.5 hours away. The sheriff's office released no other details other than to say they followed up on the tip. Right now, baby Emmanuel is still missing. Authorities have not ruled out foul play after noting some inconsistencies in the mother's story. She and the baby's father, Jake, are at the center of the investigation at this point. We've just learned there was a warrant issued for the parents' cell phones. Rebecca refused to take a polygraph test without a lawyer present. And to be fair, that could just be common sense. Investigators seized Jake's car to look for possible evidence. And again, to be fair, police always try to investigate and eliminate family members in cases like this. But it doesn't usually take this long, and this father has a criminal history that is especially relevant here. He was convicted of felony child cruelty for abusing his 10-week-old baby girl in 2018. She suffered horrible injuries. Yet his attorney said in a statement that he is cooperating with police, but a nonprofit called the Uvalde Foundation for Kids was running its own search for Emmanuel at first and later called it off, citing holes in the parents' story. Now, after hearing from the father's attorney, the group is reevaluating and giving the benefit of the doubt. A statement from them speaks to the parents directly. It says, in part, quote, "Join our search and you will be protected. You will have the opportunity to change the sad trajectory and narrative of this case, a case which involves your child. If you have nothing to hide, step forward and you will find you have more support than you can ever imagine." Joining us now is Bobby Chacon, former FBI special agent, and via telephone joining us is Laura Matthias, a journalist closely following this case. She's also the host of Hidden True Crime podcast. Bobby, I'd like to start with you. What do you make of the fact that police, on the one hand, are saying the couple has stopped cooperating? The father's lawyer, on the other hand, says, we're doing everything they asked us to do. In fact, we'll come down tomorrow for questioning if you want us to. How can you have two such diametric opposites?
Yeah, well, I'd like to hear from the sheriff's office, what the nature of that lack of cooperation or non-cooperation is, given the lawyer statement that you just referenced. So I would like to hear from them to say what the father has done that or hasn't done that they want him to do. Particularly in light of the lawyer saying he's ready and willing to come down. Now, the mother has refused to take a polygraph, like you said, without her lawyer present. Polygraphs are not given usually with lawyers present. It's a one-on-one type of thing with the polygrapher and the subject. So that's concerning. The father's attorney, I believe, may represent him in his prior conviction, he said, I believe he was out on parole and he may have violated or is accused of violating some of his parole conditions. So, so there's a lot of complications in this, but that was a strong statement that nonprofit just gave, saying, come forward and you'll get all the support. Now, if they don't come forward, given that strong statement of support, you have to start to wonder.
Well, it was a couched strong statement of support, Bobby. They said, okay, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt after saying yesterday, sorry, we're out. You guys, this is a problem with the parents here. There are a lot of holes in their account. They're now saying, okay, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt if you come forward and start to participate in the search, if you come forward and give clear evidence that you're cooperating with police.
Yeah, it's almost like a proffer agreement that a prosecutor's office would give to somebody under suspicion, like come in and we used to call it a Queen for a Day letter and just give us everything you know and then we'll move forward with from there. That's kind of, you're right. I mean, it's kind of couched in those terms, but given the initial reticence of cooperation or cooperation and a pullback and then cooperation again, they want to make sure that they don't have their nonprofit kind of, assisting a case where, the parents may be, at fault here.
Yeah, Lauren, what do you make of this tip that came from Kern County, 3.5 hours away, that somebody may have spotted the baby? First of all, it's very hard to spot a baby. They're usually being held by somebody. He's 7 months old. How seriously did the sheriff's department think there was anything to this?
I think that the sheriff's department definitely thought there was something to this, and maybe there still is. Their statement tonight was very vague, saying we know about this sighting, acknowledging to the public, look, we're following, and simply saying, they didn't say it didn't end up in a dead end. They simply said, right now we have not located Emmanuel Haro. Definitely leaving it open-ended and making all of us continue to wonder. I think they're absolutely taking every tip very seriously that's coming in. And I think responding to that tip today also lets us know that they are serious about this tip, despite us not knowing if it led anywhere or not. Right now, Emmanuel has not been located.
No, he's not. And in the meantime, there are plenty of disturbing signs. Police have searched the house. Police have confiscated the father's car. They've confiscated all electronic devices belonging to both parents, who apparently have supplied voluntarily the passwords to those devices. They were searching the property of the home with cadaver dogs, which is never a good sign.
No, never a good sign. And not only that, but as you pointed out in this same statement I brought up, they're saying, and we welcome the parents to help in this investigation, showing us once again that despite what their attorney is saying or what Jake Haro's attorney is saying, detectives are making it clear they aren't helping right now. That's exactly how I took that in this statement tonight.
All right. Bobby Chacon, Laura Mathias, thank you both so much. Such a disturbing story, deeply troubling on so many levels. Appreciate it, your insight. All right, coming up for us, free buses, $30 minimum wage, and rent freezes. Those are the promises from New York City's leading mayoral candidate, Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani. But what would the reality actually be with a 34-year-old neophyte calling the shots in America's biggest city? John Stossel's been having some nightmares about that, and he's here to join us next. If there's one key takeaway from the 2024 election, it is that the Democratic Party has lost its way with new and young voters. And new research published in the New York Times suggests this problem has been years in the making. There are 30 states in America that allow voters to register with a political party, and Democrats lost ground to Republicans in every single one of them between 2020 and 2024. While Republicans picked up registered voters in key states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Florida, Democrats lost them in Nevada, North Carolina, and beyond. All told, 4.5 million voters shifted red, and most of them were young people. Now, whole books have and will be written on what caused this migration. Some will blame it on President Biden's cognitive decline, some on the cost of living. Others will blame it on years of so-called woke policies and messaging. Many of those young, newly registered Republican voters were kids during the years of peak woke and became de facto guinea pigs for its most ideological indulgences. Apparently, many did not enjoy the experience. While strident progressivism may have fallen out of favor everywhere in wide swaths of the country, left-leaning enclaves still remain. Take New York City, for example. A lot of the city did see a slight shift Republican last November, but the city is still overwhelmingly blue. Or maybe it's pink. Democratic primary voters there just chose a socialist for their candidate for mayor. Zoran Mamdani's policies are so far left that New York's most influential Democrats, like Senator Chuck Schumer, Governor Kathy Hochul, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, still have refused to formally endorse him. And considering the trends we just mentioned, you can't blame them. Mamdani's charisma and social media savvy are top-notch, and his platform is simple to understand. Give out freebies, tax the rich. But when a 33-year-old candidate with hardly any experience tells you he's going to give you something for nothing, is it really smart to believe him? My old friend and colleague John Stossel thinks not, and he produced a whole video series hoping to awaken his fellow New Yorkers from their Mamdani fever. Here's a clip from part 2.
The socialist politicians also say they'll make workers' lives better by raising the minimum wage to $30 an hour. That's popular. Last year, California's fast food workers celebrated the new $20 minimum wage. 18,000 fast food jobs vanished, while other states added jobs.
Freeze the rent!
Activists like that.
Freeze the rent! Freeze the rent!
But they only like it because they don't realize it creates shortages. Everywhere it's been tried. St. Paul, Minnesota imposed rent controls.
The most stringent measure in the country.
So in St. Paul's twin city, Minneapolis, socialist Aisha Chugtai said,
I want us to follow their lead.
She's now vice president of the Minneapolis City Council. But when I interviewed her, she didn't even know that rent controls stopped most apartment building in St. Paul. Builders still build in Minneapolis. Building permits were up 65%. But in St. Paul, they're down 60% because of rent control. You're not going to get more apartments by pushing this. Her silence reveals so much.
I mean,
don't politicians research issues before imposing government force on others?
I'm going to maintain that guaranteeing housing for people and making sure that they can stay in their homes matters more than anything else does.
All right, John Stossel joins me live. John, that was a classic moment right there. Explain why rent control leads to nobody building, why that depresses the housing market.
You can't fight supply and demand. If landlord, he has a lot of places he could build, and he's taking risks. And if in Minneapolis he knows he won't be able to raise the rent as costs go up, why build there? He'll build someplace else. The fastest way to destroy a town outside of bombing is to have rent controls. They sound good, protect the existing tenants, but soon the landlords stop making improvements. And the people living in their nice, big rent-controlled apartments never moves. You don't have the normal market dynamism where young couples move into gradually larger apartments and old people move out. It freezes the market and makes it worse for everyone.
And it also makes the units themselves, the buildings themselves, run down because landlords don't have the funds to keep them up, to keep them safe, to keep them up to snuff.
Or incentive, because why renovate it if they can't charge more for the renovation?
So I noticed in your clip you included those rallies where everybody's chanting, freeze the rent. I remember, I live in New York City, seeing those Mamdani commercials play relentlessly, nonstop. I'm going to freeze the rent, And we saw at the end of that long pause with the council member in Minneapolis who wants to copy the St. Paul policy, even though the St. Paul policy tanked St. Paul. Everybody just loves the slogan. Yes, everybody wants everybody to have an affordable house. Nobody wants anyone to go broke trying to pay their rent. But taking that slogan and putting it into reality is a huge difference. It's a big leap.
And nothing works as well as capitalism. People don't like it, but you can't fight the market. Supply and demand is what has improved our lives.
So, New York City, polls show Mamdani continues to run away with this race so far. He's leading all the other.
Bets give him 81%.
Yeah.
I don't trust the polls. Polls are garbage, but the betting is much more accurate. He's the 83% actually, as of an hour ago, favorite.
Okay, so he's practically a shoo-in at this point. But John, New York City is not a city full of dunces. There are people who have very, big educations in this city. Why is nobody wondering why this doesn't add up? I mean, don't a lot of people know that you're going to kill incentive by freezing rents, that you can't give everybody free bus rides and without expecting the subway system to completely collapse, or that if you raise minimum wage like California did, businesses will just close down or lay people off?
Also, California hurt itself with 20. He's talking $30 an hour.
Right. We're like what? That's.
I would say most people don't know this. I mean, we New Yorkers may be especially dumb. A lot of young people with these Ivy League educations just believe in these progressive ideas. Oh, his heart is in the right place. He wants to help people. And they just haven't paid attention to how these policies have always failed.
Yeah, I think also his very slick, very sophisticated social media campaign has helped with that generation as well. Although, as we just said in the lead-in to you, John, more young Americans are registering Republican than Democrat across the country.
Not in New York City. and I should also say, he's not a shoo-in. I mean, 80% means there's still a 20% chance he won't win.
We'll see. How are you sleeping at night, John? You're getting ready to move out of New York City if he gets elected?
I'm not worried. There's a limit to how much politicians can hurt us. Fortunately, most of life is outside politics. It's our families, our friends. It's also governed by well beyond the mayor. We'll do okay in New York City. And despite what the media tell you, life's pretty good in New York City.
It is pretty good. All right, John, great to see you. Thanks so much.
You too.
All right, coming up on America's fastest growing cable channel, it's the size of Manhattan. It's from outside our solar system, and it looks like it might be emitting light. So, of course, it's nuclear-powered alien technology, right? Well, a Harvard astrophysicist actually thinks so, and he's here to tell us why. And don't forget, you can download our NewsNation app for the very latest news and top stories of the night. What if an interstellar object whirling through our solar system is actually a nuclear-powered spacecraft sent by aliens to test how humans respond? That's what a noted astrophysicist believes might be the case, and he says an image from the Hubble telescope backs him up. Most scientists agree that the so-called 3-Eye Atlas is a comet from another solar system. But Harvard scientist Avi Loeb claimed on this show a couple of weeks ago that it could actually be some type of alien technology. Now, that's a controversial opinion all on its own. But he's now going a step further, arguing that the 3-Eye Atlas could be a nuclear-powered alien spacecraft. Loeb says the Hubble picture appears to show the object emitting its own light. The object also appears to lack something that all comets have in common, and that's a tail. So what is this thing exactly? Well, joining us now is Avi Loeb. He's the head of the Galileo Project, director of Harvard University's Institute for Theory and Computation. He's also the best-selling author of the book Extraterrestrial. Great to have you back on the show. So you now say this is not only an alien spaceship, but it's nuclear powered? Why are you saying that?
Well, thanks for having me. First, I should say that if the light that we observe from this object is reflection of sunlight, its size needs to be bigger than Manhattan Island, 20 kilometers or so. And there isn't enough rocky material in interstellar space to deliver a rock of that size earlier than 10,000 years from now. So the question is, what is it? And its orbit, the trajectory that it takes, is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun to within 5 degrees. That's a chance of 1 in 500. And moreover, the timing
What does that
of
tell you? What does that trajectory tell you?
Well, it indicates that perhaps it was designed by some intelligence.
That something's steering it.
Not necessarily, but the trajectory itself was chosen to be such that this object will pass close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. The chance of that happening, the timing of its arrival is perfect for that, with a likelihood of 1 in 20,000. And so I'm just saying we should observe it. It doesn't look like it's a random occurrence. The size, the trajectory, the fact that it comes so close to 3 planets in our solar system, and actually it comes closest to the sun on October 29th, when the Earth would be on the other side of the sun. We won't be able to observe it. I'm analyzing right now the best image we have of it. We don't have any evidence for gas around it in the spectrum that was taken, but we do see some fuzz, some halo of scattered light around it in front of it.
We're looking at the image now. What does that tell you, that halo of light around it?
Right. So usually for comets, you see a cometary tail trailing the objects from behind because it's being pushed by the radiation from the sun. The dust particles are pushed to be behind, to lag behind the object. In this case, what we are seeing is a glow in front of the object. And I'm analyzing first if this is caused by dust. The amount of dust is very little. Over 6 months, the amount of dust that will be ablated from the object to generate this glow is just less than 1 millimeter thick. So it could be just dirt on a solid surface of such an object. And the question is, what is the nature of this object? Of course, as it gets closer to the sun, we would get a better view of it. And we could use spacecraft like Juno next to Jupiter. I spoke about it with Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She called me on the phone and I gave her an update about the object. And she encouraged in a formal letter she wrote to the head of NASA, Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, to encouraging NASA to use Juno, which is next to Jupiter, to come close to 3I Atlas when it will get there on March 16th, 2026.
So Juno could gather some data, take some pictures of this thing?
Yes, but also a camera that is next to Mars, because this object will come very close to Mars as well on October 3rd, 2025, and it will be within a distance of 29 million kilometers from Mars. And there is a 0.5 meter camera that is currently used to watch Mars itself, but I encourage the team that operates it to look at 3I Atlas, and they can get a pixel resolution of 30 kilometers around this object, so we can get a better sense of what the nucleus of this object is.
And super quick, Avi, is there any reason to be concerned about this?
Yeah, you never know what kind of intent it has, and I think we should, in the future, have some international organization that decides how to respond to a visitor to our backyard, because that visitor may enter through the front door.
Avi Loeb, fascinating. We will see what happens. It would be really great if, as you said, Juno or the camera that is near Mars could somehow maneuver itself to get in position, to get a snapshot or some data of this thing as it goes past. Thanks for joining us tonight. Always great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, and I'll be glad to update you in the future with more data.
Come back anytime. All right, coming up for us, the U.S. Marshals are offering a $500 reward for tips leading to arrests in President Trump's D.C. crackdown. Good idea? Chris Cuomo joins me next. now. Chris Cuomo's about to come up. He's about to speak to the man in charge of President Trump's D.C. crackdown, the director of the U.S. Marshal Service. Did you see they're putting out a QR code with a reward? Like if you call and get it lead to an arrest of somebody, you get $500.
McGruff, the crime dog, writ large. Look, I think the mistake politically and practically is fighting the need to help, and the real battle is over the solutions. And this mistake keeps being made, especially on the political left, where they find themselves, because they want to oppose Trump, they wind up seeming as though they're on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue.
Yeah.
People want to be safer from crime.
Everywhere.
How to do it? That's a different conversation, but it's not the one we're having, but we will tonight.
Oh, that'll be a good, very, very interesting show. It's been interesting. There's been a lot of, questions raised about all the National Guard arriving from all these states. All these Republican governors have been quick to offer their assistance to President Trump, but many of those Republican governors have states with higher crime rates than what is in Washington, D.C.
So what does that tell you?
Gee, that it's political?
That's right. And I think you got to see it for what it is without making the mistake of becoming what you oppose, which is to say, don't go there.
Right.
D.C.'s fine. Leave it as it is. We see the same thing here in New York City. Perception is reality in politics. And you can say, well, there are worse places. There are. It doesn't mean that the people in D.C. don't want it to be better. The question is, who has the better ideas to achieve that?
Yeah, and how you make your argument, because, gosh, nobody wants crime. All right, Chris, looking forward to it. Have a great show.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.